I feel like a bit of an idiot because a few months ago I read what I thought was the last Debbie Reynolds book that I had to read. And then randomly I discovered the existence of If I Knew Then. And I had no idea it existed. So I immediately bought the Kindle version. The Kindle version was released in 2011. The book itself was released in 1962 when Debbie was 30, which is significant, and I'll talk about that in a moment. Also, today is Debbie Reynolds' birthday, just by pure coincidence, so happy would-be birthday to Debbie. And the book is a kind of Dear Debbie where she's providing advice to the reader. And some of the advice is very dated. I will at the end give an example of just one thing that really made me laugh. So some of the advice is definitely relevant. Well, maybe not relevant, but certainly dated more towards the reader in the 60s, which is absolutely fine. But some of it is absolutely still relevant today, such as if you're not ready to kiss a guy, don't do it. A lot of it is aimed at girls, but there's some advice in there for guys as well. And we do get little stories from Debbie's life, little anecdotes, and having read her other books, I'm aware of pretty much everything that was mentioned in this book, but there were a couple of things that I learned, and there were some photos as well. Each section has some photos of Debbie, and a couple of them I hadn't seen, so that was quite nice as well. So even if you're a diehard Debbie fan, and you've read all of her other books, there are still some aspects of this that might be new and fresh to you, which I was really, really pleased about. And in terms of the actual substance of the book, it's not the longest, but according to Amazon, the print length is 206 pages, so quite short, but it's not a bad length nevertheless. There are times when it's interesting, when Debbie is sharing her stories. There are times when it's maybe not the most fascinating, certainly towards the end. Most chapters have a kind of overarching theme, and Debbie will share her views and her advice, but towards the end, we get kind of quick-fire questions where there'll be a brief letter or a brief question from somebody. I have no idea where these questions came from or if they were made up for the book. If anybody knows that, please feel free to share. But we'll have brief questions and a couple of paragraphs, and that bit was maybe not the most fascinating. If you're looking for advice on those topics, maybe, but certainly for me, and I imagine for other Debbie Reynolds fans, the interesting parts are her personal stories that she interweaves with her advice. Now, when I said at the beginning, the fact that she was 30 is quite significant, is because I feel like 30, speaking as a 33-year-old, is quite a young age to be giving advice. But that being said, most of the advice she's giving is targeted towards younger readers, targeted more towards teenagers who are going on their first dates, and they're starting to take an interest in romance, and a lot of the tips are about dating. There are other tips along the way though, and I guess being 30 means that she's old enough to provide this advice to younger viewers, but I still feel like, and maybe it's just because I'm in my 30s and feel like I'm in no position to be giving life advice, I feel like it is quite a young age for them to say, hey, I know what we should do. We should ask this 30-year-old to provide advice and wisdom. Now, granted, she has a lot of wisdom and she had a lot of experience. She'd been in the entertainment industry for the best part of, I think, about 14 years at this point, which may not sound like a lot, but she packed it all into a very short space of time. But I still feel like, as much as I love Debbie Reynolds and I enjoyed reading the book, I feel like there were other people better suited to providing wisdom, i.e. older people. But then maybe they thought 30 is not that much older than teenage, so she's still close enough in age to provide advice. I don't know. I feel like there are pros and cons, but either way, if I were to have an agony aunt kind of book, I'd kind of want the agony aunt to have had more years behind her. But nevertheless, really thoroughly enjoyed Debbie's stories, and it's very well written. The structure is very good. The photos are brilliant. If you're a Debbie Reynolds fan, I definitely recommend it. If you're looking for general advice, there might be better books out there, certainly for today, but there are some good messages in this nonetheless, and ultimately I enjoyed reading it, and I'm now pretty confident I've read all of Debbie's books, but I said that last time. And I will now share just one quote with you, just to give an example of some of the perhaps outdated opinions. Most of it is pretty relevant to today. A lot of it is just about respecting yourself, doing what's right for you. And then we have advice like this, and Debbie is providing advice on lipstick, and makeup in general. And she says, to quote, "I think a bright red on a girl's lips makes her look hard, and the practice of putting oil or Vaseline on the lips to make them shine is strictly for strippers. The boys don't like it. Would you like to kiss a greased pig?" Which is a little bit harsh, certainly because Vaseline is meant to help the lips and help with chapped lips and help stop them from cracking by keeping them moist. And I feel like saying it's just for strippers is maybe a little bit dated, and a bright red lip is yeah, I mean it is bold, it is a statement, but at the same time it's very much in fashion. I don't know if it's in fashion right now. I don't keep up with lip color trends, but in general, having a red lip is not that uncommon these days. So certainly some aspects that are maybe a little outdated, but that rather amused me, amused me quite a lot. But other than that, generally some wise advice. Do I recommend it? If you're a Debbie Reynolds fan, absolutely. It's a quick read. There are some good bits of advice, there are some nice anecdotes, and some really great pictures. And ultimately, I thought it was a pretty decent experience.